What happens when a prince who champions mental health awareness completely loses his mind on live television? Tonight, we're diving into the most shocking celebrity meltdown in late-night history, where Prince Harry went from royal guest to security escort in under 20 minutes. This isn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This is a masterclass in how fame, ego, and unresolved trauma can explode in the most public way possible. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below because this story gets more unhinged with every passing minute. The Late Show studio was buzzing with anticipation as Prince Harry walked onto the set, his usual composed demeanor intact as he settled into the guest chair across from Stephen Colbert. The audience erupted in applause, phones discreetly recording what they assumed would be another standard promotional interview for his latest mental health initiative. Little did they know they were about to witness television history in the making. "Your Royal Highness, welcome back to The Late Show," Colbert began with his trademark grin, shuffling his note cards. "I have to say, every time you're here, you bring such important conversations about mental health to our audience. It's refreshing to see someone in your position being so open about these issues." Harry's smile seemed genuine enough as he adjusted his posture, but there was something different about his energy tonight. His jaw was slightly clenched, his eyes a bit too bright, like someone who hadn't slept properly in days. "Thank you, Stephen. It's always a pleasure to be here. Mental health advocacy isn't just something I talk about. It's something I live every single day." "Absolutely, and that authenticity really comes through," Colbert continued, his tone warm, but professional. "Now, your latest campaign focuses on breaking down the stigma around therapy, particularly for men. Can you tell us what inspired this particular initiative?" The question should have been a softball, the kind Harry had answered hundreds of times before. Instead, something flickered across his face, a micro-expression of irritation that the cameras caught, but the audience missed. "Well, Stephen, that's exactly the problem, isn't it? Everyone wants to know what inspired this, what inspired that, as if trauma and mental health struggles need some kind of origin story to be valid." Colbert's eyebrows raised slightly. This wasn't the direction he'd expected the conversation to take, but he was a seasoned host. "I didn't mean to imply that at all. I think people are genuinely curious about your journey and how you've transformed your own experiences into helping others." "My journey," Harry repeated, his voice taking on a sharper edge. "Right, because everything has to be about the journey, doesn't it? The royal journey, the healing journey, the finding myself journey. Do you know what my journey actually is, Stephen? It's trying to have a single conversation about mental health without someone asking me to perform my trauma for their entertainment." The studio audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the inspirational, media-trained Prince Harry they were used to seeing. Colbert, to his credit, kept his composure, though his smile became more strained. "I understand that can be frustrating, but surely you recognize that your platform allows you to reach people who might not otherwise engage with these important topics." "My platform?" Harry laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean the platform I never asked for? The platform that was built on centuries of exploitation and colonialism? The platform that destroyed my mother and continues to destroy everyone who gets too close to it? That platform?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Colbert glanced at his producers offstage, but they were just as stunned as everyone else. "Harry, I think we might be getting a bit off track here. Your advocacy work has genuinely helped millions of people deal with their mental health struggles." "Has it, though?" Harry's voice was rising now, his carefully maintained composure beginning to crack. "Or have I just become another celebrity spokesperson? Another famous face telling people that therapy is good and stigma is bad, while the real systems that create mental health crises, poverty, inequality, institutional racism, just keep grinding people down?" "I think you're being too hard on yourself," Colbert tried to interject, but Harry was on a roll now. "Am I? Am I really, Stephen? Because from where I'm sitting, It feels like I'm participating in the exact same system that nearly killed me, just with better PR. Every time I do one of these interviews, every time I smile and nod and give you the sound bites you want, I'm complicit in the machine that turns human suffering into content. The audience was dead silent now. Even the camera operators seemed frozen, unsure whether to keep rolling or cut away. Colbert made one more attempt to steer the conversation back to safer waters. I think your passion for this cause is exactly why people connect with your message. Mental health advocacy needs voices like yours. Voices like mine? Harry's laugh was bitter now, almost manic. You mean privileged voices? Royal voices? Voices that can afford the best therapy money can buy, while telling working-class people that they just need to think positive thoughts and practice mindfulness. Is that what you think mental health advocacy looks like, Stephen? That's not what I said at all, Colbert replied, his own patience beginning to wear thin. I think you're putting words in my mouth, and frankly, you're being quite unfair to the work you've actually done. Unfair? Harry stood up abruptly, startling everyone in the studio. You want to talk about unfair? Let's talk about how I'm supposed to be grateful for a life I never chose, grateful for trauma I never deserved, grateful for a family that threw me to the wolves the moment I stopped playing their game perfectly. Harry, please sit down, Colbert said firmly, his host instincts kicking in. I think we need to take a breath here. Don't tell me to sit down, Harry snapped, his voice echoing through the studio. I've been sitting down and shutting up my entire life. I've been the good prince, the reformed prince, the mentally healthy prince, and where has it gotten me? Still being asked to perform my pain for your audience's entertainment. The confrontation was escalating rapidly, and everyone in the studio could feel it. Colbert stood up as well, his own composure finally beginning to crack. I invited you here as a guest to discuss important issues, not to be lectured about my intentions or my audience. If you can't have a civil conversation, then maybe we should end this interview right now. End it? Harry's eyes blazed with something that looked dangerously close to rage. Oh no, Stephen, we're just getting started. You want to know about mental health? Let me show you what a real mental health crisis looks like when someone finally stops pretending everything is fine. The words hung in the air like a threat, and suddenly everyone in the Late Show studio realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't just a difficult interview anymore. This was a complete psychological breakdown happening. In real time, broadcast to millions of viewers who had tuned in expecting lighthearted banter about royal life and mental health initiatives. Colbert's face had gone pale, but years of live television experience kicked in. Harry, I think you need to take a moment to collect yourself. My audience doesn't deserve to be subjected to this kind of hostility. Your audience? Harry's voice cracked with incredulous laughter. Your audience came here to watch a prince dance for their entertainment, didn't they? Well, congratulations, Stephen. You're getting exactly what you paid for. The dancing monkey is finally having his breakdown, and it's all happening on your stage. The camera operators looked frantically between their director and the unfolding chaos, unsure whether to keep filming or cut to commercial. But the train wreck was too compelling, too raw, too impossible to look away from. Harry began pacing behind his chair like a caged animal, his hands gesturing wildly as his carefully constructed public persona continued to disintegrate. You know what the really sick part is? Harry continued, his voice getting louder with each word. I actually believed my own publicity for a while. I thought I was helping people, thought I was making a difference. But every single interview, every single appearance, every single time I bare my soul about William, about my father, about my mother's death, I'm just feeding the same machine that killed her. Harry, your mother's death was a tragedy, but taking it out on me and my staff isn't going to change that, Colbert said, trying to maintain some semblance of control over his own show. You're clearly going through something difficult right now, but this isn't the place to work through it. Isn't it, though? Harry whirled around to face him, his eyes wild with something that looked like desperation mixed with fury. "This is exactly the place to work through it, Stephen. This is where I'm supposed to be vulnerable, right? This is where I'm supposed to share my truth and inspire people to seek help. Well, here's my truth. You want to see what seeking help actually looks like when you're me?" He pulled out his phone and held it up toward the audience, his hands shaking slightly. 17 missed calls from my therapist this week, 43 unread text messages from my support network, 2 prescriptions I haven't filled because I'm too busy being everyone's poster boy for mental wellness to actually take care of my own mental health. The audience was completely silent now, the kind of silence that only comes when people realize they're witnessing something they probably shouldn't be seeing. Some were recording on their phones, others were looking around nervously, wondering if they should leave. The uncomfortable energy in the room was palpable. Colbert made another attempt to de-escalate the situation. "Harry, I respect your honesty, but I think it would be better if we continued this conversation off camera. Let's take a commercial break and—" "Off camera?" Harry interrupted, his voice rising to near shouting levels. "Everything is off camera with you people, isn't it? The real conversations, the real struggles, the real cost of being your inspiration porn. That all happens off camera. But the pretty sound bites, the carefully crafted vulnerability, the sanitized version of trauma that makes your viewers feel good about themselves, that's what gets broadcast." "That's enough," Colbert said firmly, his own anger finally beginning to show. "I've been nothing but respectful to you, and you're being completely inappropriate. My show isn't your personal therapy session, and my audience isn't your punching bag. Respectful?" Harry laughed maniacally. "You call this respectful? Inviting me here to perform my trauma, to smile and nod while you ask me the same questions that every other host asks, pretending you care about mental health while really just wanting the ratings boost that comes from having a troubled royal on your show?" The accusation hit Colbert visibly, and for the first time in the interview he looked genuinely angry. "You know what, Harry? You're right about one thing. I did invite you here because you're a draw, because people want to hear from you. But I also invited you here because I genuinely believed you had something important to say about mental health. Clearly I was wrong." "Finally," Harry said, throwing his hands up in the air. "Finally, some honesty from the great Stephen Colbert. Yes, you were wrong, Stephen. You were wrong about me, wrong about mental health, wrong about everything. You want to know what real mental health advocacy looks like? It's not pretty sound bites and inspiring stories. It's this. It's messy and ugly, and sometimes it means calling out the people who profit from keeping the conversation shallow and palatable." "I've had enough of this," Colbert said, standing up and addressing someone off stage. "Can we please get security in here? This interview is over." "Security?" Harry's voice went up an octave, and suddenly he looked less like an angry advocate and more like someone who was genuinely unhinged. "You're calling security on me? The mental health advocate is calling security on someone having a mental health crisis? Do you see the irony here, Stephen? Do you see how quickly your compassion disappears when mental illness stops being inspirational and starts being inconvenient?" 2 security guards appeared at the edge of the stage, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, but ready to act if necessary. The sight of them seemed to trigger something even deeper in Harry, and his pacing became more frantic, his gestures more erratic. "This is perfect," he said, his voice taking on an almost hysterical quality. "This is absolutely perfect. The prince who talks about breaking stigma is about to be physically removed from a television studio for having a breakdown. You couldn't write better irony if you tried." "Harry, please don't make this harder than it needs to be," Colbert said, his voice a mixture of frustration and what might have been genuine concern. "Just walk away. End this with whatever dignity you have left." "Dignity?" Harry stopped pacing and stared at Colbert with an expression that was equal parts hurt and rage. "You think I have any dignity left, Stephen?" You think anyone who spent the last 5 years talking about their dead mother and their family trauma on every talk show in America has any dignity left? I sold my dignity for the cause, remember? I traded my privacy for awareness, my peace for platform. And now you want me to walk away quietly so your audience doesn't have to see what that actually costs? The confrontation had reached a breaking point, and everyone in the studio could feel it. The security guards took a step closer, and Harry noticed them moving. The sight of security guards moving toward him seemed to flip a final switch in Harry's already fractured psyche. Instead of backing down or attempting to de-escalate, he turned toward them with the kind of reckless energy that comes from someone who has absolutely nothing left to lose. "Oh, here they come," Harry announced to the audience, gesturing wildly at the approaching security. "Ladies and gentlemen, witness the exact moment mental health advocacy meets reality. When the poster boy stops being inspirational and starts being inconvenient, this is what happens. They call the muscle. Harry, nobody wants to remove you," Colbert said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Just calm down, and we can end this civilly." "Civilly?" Harry's voice cracked with bitter laughter. "There's nothing civil about any of this, Stephen. There's nothing civil about parading trauma for entertainment. Nothing civil about turning human suffering into content. Nothing civil about calling security on someone who's clearly in crisis. But sure, let's pretend this is about civility." One of the security guards, a large man who looked deeply uncomfortable with the situation, stepped forward cautiously. "Sir, we're going to need you to come with us." Harry whirled around to face him, his eyes blazing with manic energy. "Need me to come with you? Based on what authority? What exactly is my crime here, officer? Having feelings? Speaking truth? Refusing to perform my trauma in the approved manner?" "Sir, you're disrupting the show and making the audience uncomfortable," the guard replied, his voice professionally calm but firm. "Making the audience uncomfortable?" Harry threw back his head and laughed, a sound that was more disturbing than amusing. "The audience is uncomfortable? They came here to watch a prince talk about his dead mother and his family dysfunction, but they're uncomfortable when he actually shows emotion about it? They want the pain without the mess, the story without the consequences, the inspiration without the reality." Colbert had clearly reached his limit. "Harry, you need to leave. Now. This has gone far enough." "Has it, though, Stephen?" Harry turned back to him, his whole body vibrating with barely contained energy. "Because I feel like we're just getting to the good stuff. We're just getting to the part where your mental health advocate actually shows you what mental health struggles look like when they're not sanitized for television." The second security guard moved to Harry's other side, and suddenly he was flanked. The audience watched in stunned silence as what had started as a standard celebrity interview transformed into something that looked more like an intervention gone wrong. "You know what the really twisted part is?" Harry continued, seemingly oblivious to the guards positioning themselves around him. "I actually used to believe that talking about this stuff helped people. I thought if I shared my story, if I was vulnerable and authentic and all those other therapy buzzwords, maybe someone watching would feel less alone. But all I've done is turn my trauma into a brand, my pain into a product, my breakdown into entertainment." "That's not true," Colbert said, and for a moment his anger seemed to give way to something that might have been genuine sympathy. "Your advocacy has helped people, Harry, but what you're doing right now, this isn't helping anyone." "Isn't it?" Harry's voice dropped to a whisper that was somehow more unsettling than his shouting had been. "Maybe this is the most honest thing I've ever done on television, Stephen. Maybe this is what authentic mental health advocacy actually looks like. Maybe people need to see what happens when someone who's been performing wellness finally stops pretending." The first security guard reached out to touch Harry's arm. "Sir, we really need you to come with us now." The physical contact seemed to trigger something primal in Harry. He jerked away violently, nearly stumbling over his chair. "Don't touch me," he snarled, his voice suddenly dangerous. "Don't you dare touch me. I am still a prince, And you are still nobody." The words hung in the air like a slap. Whatever sympathy anyone in the room might have had for Harry evaporated in that moment. The entitled, privileged tone was so at odds with his mental health advocate persona that it was almost jarring. Colbert's face hardened. "And there it is. When things get tough, out comes the royal entitlement. You know what, Harry? Maybe you're right about one thing. Maybe this is the most honest you've ever been on television." "Finally," Harry said, his voice taking on that manic quality again. "Finally, someone gets it. This is who I really am, Stephen. Not the reformed prince. Not the mental health champion. Not the grieving son who turned his pain into purpose. I'm just another entitled, damaged rich kid who thinks the world owes him something because bad things happen to him." "Sir, we're not asking any more," the second security guard said firmly. "You need to leave the studio immediately." Harry looked around the room wildly, taking in the horrified faces of the audience, the uncomfortable expressions of the camera crew, the barely contained fury on Colbert's face. For a moment it seemed like reality might be breaking through his manic episode. "You're all recording this, aren't you?" he said suddenly, addressing the audience directly. "Every single one of you has your phones out, capturing the moment the mental health prince finally lost his mind on live television. Well, congratulations. You've got your content. You've got your viral moment. The inspirational story just became a cautionary tale." "Harry, please." Colbert made one final attempt. "Just walk away. Don't let this be how people remember you." "Remember me?" Harry's laugh was hollow now, all the manic energy draining out of him as quickly as it had appeared. "Stephen, this is exactly how people should remember me. Not as the prince who overcame his trauma, but as the man who was so broken by it that he couldn't even maintain the illusion of being okay for a 20-minute interview." The security guards moved in then, each taking one of Harry's arms with professional gentleness but unmistakable authority. He didn't resist this time, seeming to deflate completely as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. "You know what the saddest part is?" Harry said quietly as they began to escort him toward the exit. "I actually thought I was helping people. I actually believed my own story about turning pain into purpose, trauma into triumph, all those beautiful lies we tell ourselves to make suffering mean something." Colbert watched him go, his expression unreadable. "Harry," he called out as they reached the edge of the stage, "I hope you get the help you actually need." Harry paused and looked back, over his shoulder. "The help I actually need, Stephen, is for people to stop asking me to be inspirational about the worst things that ever happened to me. But we both know that's never going to happen." And with that, Prince Harry was escorted off the Late Show stage, leaving behind a stunned audience, a shaken host, and footage that would be dissected and analyzed for months to come. What had started as a routine promotional interview had ended with one of the most spectacular public breakdowns in recent television history. The cameras kept rolling as Colbert returned to his desk, visibly trying to compose himself. The audience sat in shocked silence, unsure whether to applaud, gasp, or simply leave. And somewhere in the chaos of it all, the uncomfortable truth of Harry's words lingered in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore, and even harder to forget. That's the story of how Prince Harry went from mental health advocate to cautionary tale in under 20 minutes of live television. What did you think of Harry's complete meltdown? Was Colbert right to have him removed, or should he have tried harder to help someone clearly in crisis? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking celebrity stories that'll keep you glued to your screen.